everyone!
It's time for a brand new season of What We Read.
That is true.
If
Who
we're
knows?
gonna reach 30 episodes this time. We were very close last season.
Pretty close, but we'll
But as you all know, June is usually when we shift to the next season.
That's right.
Of What We Read. Usually it's because we go to Book Expo and BookCon.
That's right.
Of course,
as our bookish new year.
Of course, with everything going on, those events have been cancelled. They're probably just gonna happen again in 2021, which is good, I think, because obviously everyone should stay safe and well. Anyway, let us move on to what we read.
Indeed.
I'm gonna start, and this first section is gonna be entirely contemporary romance. I haven't actually done much reading since the last time we filmed What We Read because I've been busy playing with Animal Crossing, which is my newest obsession.
It's totally her new thing.
The first book that I'm going to talk about is Cover Story Girl. This is by Chris Mariano. This is a romance class book, which means the author is Filipino and it was published locally, I want to say. Romance class is a group of people who really come together to study the craft, to help each other promote their books, and to share different romance novels. They're all by Filipino authors, and I think it's pretty great. I'll link to the website below so you can check it out.
Cool.
I read Cover Story Girl, and this was very dear to my heart because it's actually set in Boracay, which is a popular vacation spot in the Philippines. It's also one that
if you like beaches.
I've been to a few times with my family, with my friends. A lot. So it just brought back a lot of fun memories. So Cover Story Girl focuses on Gio. He's a curator of a museum that is in Boracay, and he's currently preparing for an exhibit. One day he meets this girl named Minhee, and she just so happens to be like an influencer, so that she uses the museum as like her backdrop for photos. But she also starts hanging around him more, and so the more time they spend together, the more he finds himself drawn to this girl. But it's also fairly obvious that she is hiding something from him, and so the entire story sort of centers around that. Although there is a completely separate plot that has nothing to do with their relationship that involves Gio and the museum and the heritage, because the museum itself is centered around a particular family and their legacy. I enjoyed the book. It's not like a completely new favorite for me, and in a lot of ways it reminds me of fan fiction, and I love fan fiction, so that in no way is like meant to be an insult, because honestly it's great. The trope that actually happens in the story, which I'm not going to say specifically because it is a spoiler for what the secret is, I was like, yep, definitely fanfiction material, but what gave it a little extra charm was the fact that it was set in Boracay. It had a lot of like Filipino touches, and I felt very nostalgic about being in Boracay because the author captured it so well, and I'm pretty sure it's because she herself is local to that area, which is pretty great. I also enjoyed the characters a lot. I like that there was more to them than just their relationship. I thought that was really cool. We didn't really get to know Minhee as well as I would have liked, but Gio, on the other hand, since we're sort of reading the story from his perspective, we really get a feel for, and I think that was definitely a mark in its favor. I do feel like it was a little quick because it's a bit on the shorter side, at least from what I'm used to. All in all, it was a pretty good, like, quick read, fun one to take my mind off things, you know. The same thing can be said about the next book, which is East in Paradise by Tiff Marcello. This is the second book in her food truck centered trilogy.
Yeah.
Or, well, it's not actually food truck centered, as you're about to find out, because East in Paradise is actually about Bryn. She is the cousin of the hero of the first book, and she has decided to stop being the manager of their family's restaurant.
Yeah.
And instead she's going to pursue her lifelong dream, which is to set up a full-service culinary retreat centered around Filipino food. So she invests in this property and she's getting all ready, and then her investor, who is providing most of the funds needed, has to back out. And so she's kind of at a loss for what to do because it was a lot of money. But she gets an offer from a sort of like a website, and they are offering to pay her to have them live stream the renovations. The only catch is that she doesn't necessarily tell her landlord slash neighbor, and when he accidentally stumbles into the live stream one day, people start to ship them together, and so he ends up getting involved in the live stream. And things kind of go from there. Like the other book, it was very charming, it was really fun. I kind of hoped that it would give me the same feelings as North to You, which it did. I like that it was a completely different story because Bryn is so different from her cousin Drew. It's funny because she manages to be both really headstrong about certain things, but also completely vulnerable about a lot of things. And I like that about her because you're able to see both sides play out as the story continues. I also liked her hero, I guess. Well, he's not really her hero, like her love interest is the better term for that. He is actually ex-military, and he is suffering from PTSD also, and he also kind of doesn't know what he wants to do with the rest of his life because now he's retired. That's his part of the story. And they have incredible chemistry, which you can kind of tell right off the bat. They sort of have like a mildly antagonistic relationship at first because they're kind of at odds and all of that. But obviously as they get to know each other, that changes, so on and so forth. And again, like I said, charming story. In this case, I was really able to root for the main couple. I kind of wanted them both to succeed at what they were trying to do, and I thought it was fun to see them sort of banter and have this chemistry, but it was also cool to see them as individuals sort of face the things that they struggled with head on, and I really like that. Plus it's set in a winery, which is pretty cool. I love that. And of course, wineries. Yeah, and of course the nice thing about this story is it also has that Filipino sort of cultural aspect to it, not just in the food, which is also the same thing that happens in the first book, but it has it in the culture. It's really fun in that sense. It just feels like I am seeing something familiar on the page, and I really enjoy that. So that was really fun, and I'm looking forward to reading the third book, which is about her sister, who we kind of saw in this one, and I cannot wait to find out what her love story is going to be like, because it sounds like it's going to be also just as entertaining and in a different way.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out.
Sounds cool.
The last book I'm going to talk about actually should have been talked about like in one of the previous what we read, but it completely slipped my mind, which is a terrible thing because I actually really enjoyed this book, and that book is the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I actually listened to most of this on audio thanks to Libro FM. There's a link down below if you want to check them out. If you are an audiobook person, they have pretty good prices, and you get to support an indie bookstore of your choice, which is great.
Huzzah. So
the Happy Ever After playlist is a companion to the novel The Friend Zone, which came out last year. The heroine in this one, Sloane, is the best friend of the heroine in the other book. I won't tell you any more about Sloane because there's something that happens in The Friend Zone that fully informs who she is in this book.
Nice.
So at the beginning of the book, Sloane comes across this dog. Well, technically the dog throws itself into her path.
No.
And she sort of grows fond of it after taking care of the dog for a while because she's unable to contact his owner. And this goes on for 2 weeks until the owner actually reaches back out to her and tells her, oh, I was away in a remote location in New Zealand, that's why I couldn't be reached, and I would like my dog back. And Sloane doesn't really want to give up the dog because she's grown attached. But eventually he's able to talk her, you know, into returning the dog to him. The dog's name is Tucker. This begins a sort of it's text messages and phone calls, like it's that kind of relationship. Jason, who is the dog's owner, and Sloane finally meet when he's back in LA. Sparks fly, except that Jason is not necessarily the simple dude he comes across as. Basically, he's actually a rock star. Plot twist! That obviously has consequences for their relationship, along with Sloane's history, which also has consequences for their budding relationship. I really like this story. I think it's because I really enjoyed Sloane as a character. She is in a very difficult position at the start of the book, and you are feeling so much empathy for her. The reason why I enjoyed this book so much and enjoyed her so much was watching her slowly work her way through that. And it was also really nice because Jason happens to be like the nicest person ever. Like he's not your typical rock star, like arrogant and like showboating. No, he's like a good dude, like through and through. He loves his family, he's super loyal, he cares about the dog, and I really enjoyed that about him. Like consistently all throughout, you just know that he's a good guy, and you know that he likes Sloane, and you just trust in that so much, and it's so appealing, and I really enjoyed that. The one reason that I cannot rate this book 5 stars is because I knew it and I saw it coming. There's a twist at the end that is sort of similar to a lot of fan fiction that I read when I was like in my boy band phase. I'm still in that boy band phase, but like when I first started being the boy band phase. There you go, yeah. There is a trope that is fairly common in that sort of fan fiction, and it happens in this book, and I'm just like, but why though? I was like, I knew it was coming.
So it's not a trope that you enjoyed, basically.
It's not my favorite trope. Like, it's not my favorite trope as an adult. To be fair, when Teen Alexa probably would have been like, yeah,
oh my god, this is awesome. But after years of
that, as an adult, I'm just like, please don't. Anyway, that trope is the reason why I couldn't give this one a full 5 stars, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend checking it out.
So it's my turn. This is part 3, opening the 4th season of what we read with part 3 of my sort of X-Men rant. I swear to God, every time I speak about the X-Men, it almost feels like I'm channeling some alternate universe version of Sophia from Golden Girls. Picture it, Sicily. Only it's picture it, Krakoa, and it's the X-Men. But it's sort of in the last what we read, I talked about like 3 of the X titles that are in the Dawn of X series, where they collect sort of like 6 titles all in one go, so you get issues 1 to 6 in each volume, so each volume is like all the issue 1s, all the issue 2s, all the issue 3s, etc. For today, I'm going to talk about the classics, X-Men, Excalibur, and X-Force. So those are classic titles. They're sort of, you know, are like sort of form the core of like who the X-Men are and what they've done over the last several decades, I want to say. And so let's start with X-Men. Gone are the days of like these little teenage children with like mutant powers that people hate and are equally costumed and fighting costume villains, that kind of deal. Now, because of everything that's happened, so please refer to the other videos so I don't have to repeat myself too much. Now that everybody knows that we're going to take over the world in a benign kind of way, because we have all of the tech and all of the cures that the world needs, as long as they just recognize us as a nation. And all of the mutants are friends now. And the Summers family is whole. There is a scene here, and I won't spoil it too much, where members of the Summers family, I'll leave it at that, are having dinner. It's the most mundane thing in the entire universe, and yet nothing about it is mundane. Literally everything about this mundane moment of a family sitting down. So you've got Scott, you've got Alex Summers, who's there, Scott's brother, right? Havoc, right? Cyclops and Havoc. You've got Rachel from the future, and also Cable, Teen Cable from the future. These are the people sitting at the dinner table. Jean is there, obviously. Corsair, I want to say, etc., etc. I won't spoil the rest, but the entire Summers family sits together for a meal in one of these episodes. And it just pulls on that thread of, in a world where the X-Men have a place. I'm telling you, my heart like exploded, like I couldn't read it like straight through because I was just like, this is everything.
Too many good things.
I didn't know that I wanted, but apparently it's here. And I don't know, because I've always considered the X-Men as sort of a family, and they are nowhere near safe. They never were. But this is the closest they've ever been to at the height of their power. And that to me is new. This is the closest they've ever been to be on the front foot when it comes to everything that is attacking them and killing them. So if any of you are fans of the Summerses on an emotional level, not just on oh, this guy's cool and whatever, right? I highly recommend Dawn of X-Men series, just by itself, if you want to follow that. There's a lot of shenanigans with the Krakoa itself, and some father and child time with Scott and Rachel and, well, Nathan, right, for Cable. And it's just great to me. So there's that. So Excalibur, people make fun of it, both in the comics, mostly Wolverine, and then maybe outside, because why would you put something that kind of meta in comics if it wasn't? I personally thought it was a great idea. I haven't read all of the Excalibur titles, but when it started out, the X-Men were dead for some reason. I don't know at this point anymore. Prompting 3 of the X-Men, a time-displaced Rachel Grey, or well, Rachel Summers at the time, Phoenix from the future, Kitty Pryde, and then Nightcrawler decide to just, hike off to the UK, team up with Captain Britain and Megan, kind of half Fae, half, she's a lot of things, and can be a lot of things too. That's kind of her power. She's a shapeshifter among many things. And they form Excalibur, protectors of the realm and all that kind of deal. Which is cool, because it brought a little bit of the mysticism back. Yeah. Now, what does that look like in the Krakoa times? What that looks like is Captain Britain, for whatever reason, is sucked into the other realm where Morgan Le Fay and everybody else lives. Plays a lot of the Arthurian legend, by the way. His powers, and he just gets manipulated into becoming Morgana Le Fay's like pet creature. And Betsy is there the whole time, his sister. Finally has her original body. Psylocke finally has her body back. She's back to the purple hair, which I guess is indigenous to whatever her DNA is. Somebody in the family had purple hair, so she does too. He gives her like the amulet and whatever, and makes her Captain Britain. Okay. So for the first time in literally almost maybe a long time, if not ever, Captain Britain's a female. And she's a mutant. And there are mutant haters in the UK as well. So to have that immense kind of power play where whoever serves the Queen is Captain Britain, and it just happens to be a mutant as well. All of the racists in that part of the world who hate mutants are just like up in arms. So it's a real play on mutant supremacy in a benign kind of, well, you know what, we've been saving the world anyway. Which is weird is Apocalypse is part of this team. Like, you'll see it on the cover. Yeah, that Apocalypse. Like, the Age of Apocalypse. That dude. This entire thing is weird. He has his... what's funny is since Dawn of X and Apocalypse joined because he's a mutant, he decided to change his name. And in the comics, it's spelled with just a giant A and a bunch of like scribbles on the side. And every so often people are like, okay, I guess that's your name. And nobody does it. And only one of the people, I forget which one of the people he said, this is my name now. And you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. Like, to actually call it out that it's that crazy. And it delves into mysticism. It brings the magic back into the X-Men and the mystical sort of side of it. Jubilee is in there. Why not? Gambit and Rogue are part of the lineup. It's the weirdest lineup that I've seen in a long time. To have Betsy raise that psychic sword, it's a blade now. Like, it's not just, and it's like, kind of like a British double-handed longsword for Queen and Country. I'd like to say, is it's so surreal. It's like the art is beautiful to me. At first, it took me a while to like the Captain Britain art, because why the flower in the hair? I mean, you know, you don't need to put the flower in there to assert feminism, you know, femininity, but maybe you do. I don't know, or maybe it's just pretty. It matches her hair color, I guess. That's fine too. But I kind of like it now. I've kind of gotten used to it, and I'm just like, all right, fine. Let her wear the flower. It's okay. It's cool. It works. The colors match. So there's that. Lots of shenanigans. Very mystical. I don't know if I want to recommend it though. I really don't. It's just because I think it's just a little wow. What was that? Lastly, X-Force. X-Force has been a lot of things in the earlier days.
Like it has been a lot.
It's been a lot of things. In the earlier days, it was just like Cable leading a bunch of like a ragtag bunch of like mercs and, you know, mutants with like a weird kind of thing, and there were a motley crew of sort of people. At one point in time, and this is one of my favorite runs of X-Force, they became, when Cyclops was going on all militant and stuff like that, they became basically the X-Men's hit squad. A secret that Scott kept from all of the mutants. It was Scott and Emma who ran X-Force, like, from behind the scenes. Not so much ran, sorry. Sanctioned. They sanctioned X-Force. Scott approached Wolverine and he said, yo, we have so many enemies right now. Take them out before they get to us. And Wolverine basically gathers like X-23, Warpath, just all of the murderers of X, and he's like, yeah, we'll do it. What I love about that iteration of X-Force is that it leads up to the whole Messiah arc, where Hope sort of comes back into the thing, and so X-Force was sort of in swing, and they all had like gray and black versions of like the X-Men outfit that used to be like yellow and blue. Just make that gray and
okay, got it.
And it gave me some of my favorite moments, pretty much almost ever. Like X-23 was there. Of course, she didn't have a place because she was still recovering from the whole mind games kind of, am I a weapon? Am I a human? Am I a mutant? What am I? And that was lovely. Moving into now, what does the X-Force of Krakoa look like? It starts out with the assassination of Charles Xavier. Literally, that happened in the first episode. And I'm just like, whoa, oh, I knew it was too perfect. They shoot him in the face. Like, that's just really what happens. And they're like, assemble like whoever in the background. And so this iteration of X-Force is exactly that. Now that they are a nation, X-Force, which used to be a hit squad, is now officially the nation's CIA.
Okay.
Which is insane. It's both the CIA and whatever Wet Works hit squad kind of, you know, it's depicted of the CIA in like traditional approachable assassins genre stories.
Oh, your fave.
My personal favorite. And it gets weirder because now Beast is sort of their like central intelligence, like
I can
sort
say
of
that
like
actually.
head.
That actually
He's the one who's like analyzing all of the data, making sure that everything's kind of whatever. He's sort of like the brain and the soul of the operation. But the people on the front that are killing, like making sure that everybody that killed, you know, that tries to kill the mutants, well, first of all, they want to hunt down who killed Xavier.
Of course.
Of course, why are we not surprised Wolverine's leading the front charge? But Jean is leading
Shocker.
But Jean is leading from the top as well. It's nuts, like that you've got both Logan and Jean working together in a we get them before they get us kind of way. And I think to me that's a great pull. Now, doesn't mean they always work together side by side on every single mission, but that they're working concurrently. There's even an appearance by Quentin Quire, who is, for those who like, just Google him. There's very little else I want to say about him, but Quire is something. He's a piece of work, but he's there, Kid Omega. And yeah, it's this gritty, action-packed. This I would recommend to X-Force fans who want to know, well, what does X-Force look like now? But do I recommend it off the street to anybody else? Probably not, because it's so contextual. Okay. I would still recommend the middle X-Force gray and black suits. I think that was the Remender sort of like run. So that is Dawn of X. It landed on a very, very powerful note. It's the kind of thing where it's like all of them are like season 1 enders that leave cliffhangers that'll be resolved in season 2. That's how every single run of the 6 books in Dawn of X feel like. So I have pre-ordered Dawn of X 7 because it's a whole bunch of different books now. I think Fallen Angels is done. It was sort of like just a 6-shot run. And they start slating new stuff. So
interesting.
Very much looking forward to that moving forward.
Well, since we're still talking sort of about sci-fi and fantasy, my next section is going to feature 3 books that fall right into those categories. We're going to start with Nightfall, which is the 6th book in the Keeper of the Lost City series.
6 books in!
Shannon Messenger. I feel like a broken record every time I talk about the series because I don't like telling you what's happening in the actual plot of the book that I'm holding up.
And plus it'll be too
spoilery.
It's
like spoilery forever, obviously.
And the cover's already enough of a spoiler,
even the cover is a spoiler, like I was about to say.
But it's a good one though, because it doesn't really tell you anything.
Well, most of them don't really tell you anything, let's be real. Anyway, this is the 6th book in that series. As we've said before, Sophie Foster discovers that she's not only human, she's actually an elf. And so she gets whisked away into this whole brand new world where she has to learn all these brand new rules and go to Elven school. Only to discover that even among the elves, she's actually special.
Special.
Because of things. The entire series has spanned both Sophie learning all of these things about herself and also being put in mortal danger because of who she is. And of course, everyone who ever cared about her is also put in equal danger. And that's pretty much the context of every single book in the series. This particular book I had gone into after, I think it's been like a couple of months since I read the 5th one, which was stressful, mind you. And this one was weirdly both more stressful and also less stressful. More stressful because at the beginning and at the end, there were a lot of things happening in the book to Sophie and company that were like one after the other, and I was just like getting whiplash from being thrown all over the place emotionally. But there is like this very, very noticeable lull in the middle of the book. And I don't know if it is a deliberate choice on Shannon Messenger's part to make you also feel the same frustration and anger that Sophie has. Because the entire time Sophie's just like, I need to be doing something. I have to be doing something. But there's this long, like moment
I think that was on purpose. I think that was on purpose. And it does help build towards the end because the minute it does build.
We've said it before. Both of us have said it before about the series. But with every book, you learn something new about the world or about the lore, and it just makes the saga bigger. It makes Sophie's story bigger. It makes anyone who's related to her story bigger. You learn things about her, about them, about their world. It's crazy, and I'm like, it's 6 books in, okay, and I'm still like, the fact that she still manages to pull the rug out from underneath me is very impressive. And there's a lot of screeching, obviously, because I have certain favorites. And in this book, there are some very choice moments that I adored.
Please listen to Fandom Buzz. It's our podcast. There is a link below. That's where we talk about all of it. Just scroll through which ones we talk Keepers of the Lost City in, and you will totally hear all of the screeching. It's great.
Anyway, this was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It was funny because Kristen and I had a few months before been like, we're gonna buddy read it. We never did it. And then we both ended up still accidentally buddy reading it because she started and I was like, hey, I'm gonna start it too. And so we ended up buddy reading it anyway.
And this is actually one of my favorites in the entire series.
Yeah, this was a great installment.
This is a good one.
And I totally recommend the series. It's definitely worth the read, especially if you like middle grade. Speaking of series, the next 2 books, I guess I'll just talk about them in tandem because technically they are part of one series. We have Illumine and Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. These are the first 2 books in the Illumine files. So where to begin with Illumine? Maki has already described this book a few times on the channel now, but basically in the first book, a big corporation called Baytech attacks a planet called Carenza, and the story pretty much focuses in on 2 teenagers. There's Ezra Mason and Katie Grant, who used to date but are now broken up, and they find themselves part of the refugees who are fleeing from the destruction on a set of ships. Except that it's not that simple, because aside from the fact that obviously they're trying to outrun Baytech, who apparently wants to liquidate everyone for some reason, there's also other things going on internally on some of the ships, and it's not looking good. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, let's just say there's so many sci-fi elements to this thing that they put together at the same time, and Alexa was screaming about pretty much all of them as they happened.
Yeah,
it was the
I was actually going to say pretty much something to the effect of that. Like, I'm not normally a sci-fi person, but I can recognize sort of the familiar elements from other sci-fi stories that I've experienced through film, through TV, occasionally through books.
And they're usually standalone elements.
And
like,
they're
it's
usually,
about just that one element.
Except in this book, for some reason, they were like, let's just throw everything in there. And it works.
I was about to say it
That's the thing.
Works.
So, a couple of things. The first thing is that this book is formatted in a very unique way, which I'm sure a lot of people have talked about. Because they're files, it's a lot of surveillance footage, chat transcripts, emails, transmissions, all that sorts of stuff. It's good. Here's the thing though, while that might have worked for some people who read it physically only, I honestly think if I'd read it only that way, I probably would have liked it, but not really liked it.
Because...
And the thing is, I ended up doing a thing where I listened to the audiobook, which is a full cast production, and I read it physically at the same time. So it's one of those rare occasions where I listened to the audiobook at regular speed just so I could have the full experience. And it was so good. The adaptation into an audio is just fantastic. it translates so well, and it just amps the tension and everything. The cast is brilliant. The sound effects make it feel more intense. The entire time I was reading it, I was like, I did not expect to care so much, because at the beginning of the book I was like, oh, this is fine. It was like a chat transcript, they were being interviewed, blah blah blah. Cut to like halfway through the book, I'm like, why do I care so much? This is so important. And I was telling Maki, like, to line up with the first thing that we both sort of mentioned about it, I was 50% in, and I'm like, listen, everything has already happened. What else is gonna happen in the last 50% of this book? Except that there were a billion things that happened, and I was thoroughly traumatized, may have shed a tear or two.
Or a lot.
Or a lot. But it was great. I'm so glad I went that route when reading it. It was something that really worked for me personally. I can see why it wouldn't work for everyone though, because you have to be interested in the sci-fi story and also just in it for the crazy shenanigans that go down in this book. The same thing applies to Gemina, but I do want to give that book a specific shout out. I can give it so much credit for the fact that I started out not liking one of our main narrators, and by the end of the book I was like, she's my favorite character, she's got this. I find it very impressive that Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff were able to make her character reveal itself to the reader through this alternative format in a way where it's like she really grows on you and you really get to know her and you see her grow, and it's just so good. Oh my god. Same experience. I got to like the 50% mark of the book and I was like, what else is gonna happen right now? It was so stressful in a good way. I really enjoyed it. What I like about Gemina is that it has a lot of the same elements as Illuminae. There's obviously a lot of crazy people trying to, oh, I don't know, eliminate other people. This one is not set on the escaping ships. This is actually set in a different place. It's set on a space station called Heimdall. Instead of, you know, having to flee and being on the ships and being in the middle of nowhere, space station Heimdall is basically hijacked. And it is like this closed circuit story where there's a limited time period, because it all happens in the course of 2 days, more or less.
Thereabouts.
And it also happens only within that certain space station, which is very, very, very crazy. They had a lot of the same sci-fi tropes in this one. Like, a lot of them showed up. And then they added another one, and I was just like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it's just they basically took everything and then just build another layer on.
I was unprepared because I did not see it coming. And it's probably partly because I'm not super high and familiar on sci-fi in general, but I did not see this coming. And when it finally dropped, I was like,
I am actually super pleased.
The audacity.
Yes, I'm super pleased that, because Gemina is also my favorite so far, I'm so happy that she loved Gemina so much. And the characters that I love so much for Gemina, she ended up going, oh my god, these people, you know, and so it's just great. Just one more thing. Can we just say how masterfully done each and every, like, the interiors of these books are?
Actually,
there are templates and there are texts and you know, like, just these, you know, kind of like hidden internet pages or whatever.
Well, my favorite is actually
there's a sketchbook
in there.
This is such a masterpiece of just an amazing piece of work. Like, it's a class all on its own. And I don't even know that anybody should even try to attempt this thing if you have no idea what you're doing.
Yep. Clearly they do.
Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff are geniuses for putting this kind of storytelling format together. And the care, like, look at these emails, right? It's just gorgeous. The layout is as phenomenal as the story, I'd like to say.
Bottom line is, the Illuminae Files was brilliant. If you are gonna read it and you can listen to audiobooks, like, it's your thing, definitely do the audiobook thing, because it's so cool. Like, it's just really well done. Otherwise, I hope you check it out anyway if you're even mildly intrigued.
That's right.
And now we've come to the end of this first episode of what we read for season 4, which is a pretty darn good one, actually.
Yeah, it's, you know, a lot of action, a lot of excitement.
Clearly.
Stories that we absolutely love, and that's a great way to kick the season off, I think.
I think so, too.
It reminds us of, well, this is why we do what we do. It's why we read. It's because it makes us feel these things.
And it's also a great escape. Although sometimes it's a stressful one. Anyway, I'm looking at the Illuminae Files, really. It stresses me out. Anyway, we hope you guys are well. Still thinking of you all. We would also like to know what you guys have been reading. It's always fun to find that out.
It's fun to
or if you've read anything in the video, obviously, feel free to let us know what you thought. We'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll see you guys with another video soon. Bye!